city of Ghouta within Syria on August 21st, 2013. And I did review a study done by an MIT professor and former UN weapon inspector. The two of those collaborated, and their research findings did challenge the U.S. claim that Assad's regime was responsible for that specific chemical attack. 5 years later, on April 17th, 2018, another sarin gas attack occurred. I think the theme here is 5 years of continued subterfuge. The consequences of these attacks are critical for both the immediate harm and suffering it inflicts upon the victims and the continued danger incurred from the mainstream media, and at the time President Obama and now President Trump, in this case, misstating who is committing such attacks, or at least not being thorough enough to determine concretely who they can prove committed the attacks. So by our failing to identify who, the U.S. more easily justifies continuing waging war on false pretenses. The Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, OPCW, they're an international body founded in 1997, consisting of about 190 different nations. They do a lot of research into chemical weapons, and they try to create a framework that could be used to help prevent their being used and help their being spread. Now, specifically with the aforementioned chemical attack in 2018, they did release a report in March of 2019, and in their findings, they stated in their view that Assad was probably most likely responsible for these attacks as well. However, did this report reflect a unanimous or at least a broad consensus of the OPCW researchers? That's a critical question, and I would say not exactly. A previously confidential leaked memo that was eventually published by WikiLeaks contained some of the researchers expressing doubts about the official and published findings. The dissenting authors focused specifically on 2 cylinders extracted from the attack sites. I will quote an excerpt from this leaked memo. At this stage, the FFM, which I guess stands for Fact Finding Mission, engineering sub-team cannot be certain that the cylinders at either location arrived there as a result of being dropped from an aircraft. The dimensions, characteristics, and appearance of the cylinders and the surrounding scene of the incidents were inconsistent with what would have been expected in the case of either cylinder having been delivered from an aircraft. In each case, the alternative hypothesis produced the only plausible explanation for observations at the scene. In summary, observations at the scene of the 2 locations together with subsequent analysis suggest that there is a higher probability that both cylinders were manually placed at those 2 locations rather than being delivered from aircraft. End quote. In this instance, the alternative hypothesis cited above, that refers to the cylinders being manually placed at the 2 locations in Douma, the city in Syria where the attack occurred, rather than they're being dropped from an aircraft, presumably Assad's Air Force. So why did the OPC report matter? Well, it helped provide a veneer of credibility to post hoc justify the Trump's administration to launch military attacks in Syria, which it did do in response to the chemical attack. And of course, upon this dissenting memo being leaked, the OPCW dismissed the dissenting voices with the predictable terms as rogue, disgruntled, etc. So ultimately, why does this all matter? Because the deceitful pattern continues. A chemical attack happens in Syria. The government, particularly the U.S. administration and the mainstream media, continues to blame Assad, while engineering studies done that are published to the public, in some cases leaked, they weaken the temerity of such accusations. This is another echo of WMD from 2003, in my opinion. So meanwhile, hundreds of thousands have died, and the refugee crisis results from this failed state. Thank you.
Thank you for watching my video, and my name is Romelette of Fil-Am World Magazine. I will see you again on my next videos, so please don't forget to hit subscribe. Okay? So you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you again.